Good morning, afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, 60% Invisible, the Hidden Access Crisis in SaaS and AI Environments. So before we begin, we need to understand why this matters. Let's start addressing what's becoming the most urgent, yet often invisible crisis for IT teams today. Hidden access and the rapid proliferation of ungoverned apps. We are in an era where users are adopting SaaS tools faster than IT teams can govern them. This includes both traditional apps and a new wave of generative AI tools. These shadow apps are often introduced by business users or contractors without going through procurement, security review, or provisioning workflows. And let's face it, we weren't prepared for this. Traditional IAM tools weren't built for SaaS sprawl. They assume you control provisioning, but in reality, many apps are self-served by employees. The risk isn't just that users are adopting new tools, it's that the new controls haven't evolved fast enough. We need a new automated governance approach to get ahead of shadow IT and the shadow AI crisis. A quick round of introductions for the panel. I'm Anubhav. I'm part of the sales team here at CloudEagle. Alongside me, I have been joined by two distinguished experts in the field of governance who will help me unpack some of the challenges faced by IT and security teams today. Let me introduce our speakers. Lennon Gali, Chief Digital and Business Officer at Atomic Work, who prior to this role was a CIO and CISO. Lennon, in his current role, interacts with many CIOs on various topics, introducing AI, agentic service management, and SaaS. Lennon, I'll let you give your own introduction.
Yeah, no, this is a topic of for a decade of my significant interest, and this is one of the reasons why I am very much involved with CloudEagle and also with the CIOs. And even after a decade, we still talk about SaaS governance and SaaS sprawl. Even before we address that, AI came in, and now AI agents and agent sprawl is taking over. So the security and governance and identity and access management is becoming the significant topic of discussion in every corner of every CIO's office.
Well, looking forward to today's session. And also we have Titus M. He's an analyst with the Everest Group and provides industry research and strategic insights on identity governance trends. Titus, over to you.
Nice to meet all of you. It's a pertinent topic which is not talked about enough, and I have a lot of things to share from a personal experience. So looking forward to the entire discussion today.
So today we are going to explore a startling reality, right? 60% of enterprise SaaS applications operate completely outside IT visibility. We'll deep dive into the data, share practical insights, and provide you with actionable strategies to regain control of your digital environment. So let's start with the hard truth, right? Research reveals that today 60% of enterprise SaaS applications operate outside IT's visibility. This isn't about a few rogue apps. We are talking about a fundamental shift in how work gets done. When I speak with IT leaders on our calls, the challenges we are solving for has also evolved. While visibility remains a key challenge, IT leaders are growing more wary of AI tools, as most of these tools are young products without SSO support, do not, in most cases, have the necessary SOC 2 certification that is needed. So my question to you, Lennon, what's your immediate reaction when you hear that 60% of SaaS apps are operating outside IT visibility?
I can relate to it pretty much because for a decade, we have this notion of IT being too slow, and usually what you get is no for most of the time because they're overwhelmed with all of the things that there's on their plate. So that drove most of the organization to make certain decisions within their budget realms. And that created, from 10, 20, 30 general apps into hundreds of SaaS applications that came up into the ecosystem. So eventually what happens is that instead of basically going through proper procurement process, you're putting credit card, you're putting your personal cards, and then you're basically invoicing, and everybody got some sort of a limit of how much they can spend. just to kind of encourage people to go and become productive. Obviously, many of these are novel ideas, and it worked for some time, but then quickly realized that it opened up a gaping hole of security issues across the organization. Number one, IT, was brought back in and then say, hey, we're spending way too much money. I don't know where we're spending, who is using, why are they using these applications? CFO's first question is can you just bring it back up? And why are we keep increasing the IT budgets every year? Well, IT basically says, look, none of these are under my purview. I can't really figure this out. So I have to go on a discovery hunt. And so now the discovery happens, everything else becomes, and then now you identify all of these applications, even when employee leaves, that access is still open to many of these apps. And I think this has been going on for a while. And obviously, it all ties down into how reactive you are, how proactive you are, and what are the maturity levels you have, how much influence you have in taking over some of these issues from a security standpoint and IT standpoint. Obviously, the challenges still remain.
I completely resonate and with that, right? I mean, we just had a customer, and it's interesting because they said that they didn't have this problem of people buying things off a credit card, and I was very surprised that they actually had a very strict control over this process. And I was curious to understand how they were able to manage this, and the answer was quite unique as well, and their answer was quite simple. We just stopped reimbursing them. And yeah, so there are some ways in which people are tracking that, but I get the point completely. Thanks for that. Titus, from your research perspective, how does this 60% figure compare to what you are seeing just 12 to 18 months back before the AI boom began?
Yeah, like Lenin said, this shadow IT, shadow AI is not a new problem, right? It's always been there in IT estates, but the numbers and the volume and the pace at which there's change is what's really concerning, right? We've typically seen 20-30% of IT spend being unaccounted for, being shadow IT, traditionally in large enterprises, right? But now when you look at it, we are seeing, you are showing 60% number. Our research also suggests 50 to 55% of SaaS is not accounted for. Now we might, with agents coming in, we might even see 90% numbers coming in very soon. Right? And I'm not even really exaggerating the number. With agents coming in, the control is also not there, right? So we are simply going to see an explosion of it, and the pace is going to be really strong, right? Even in a 12 to 18 months gap, we have seen twice the amount of growth in net new SaaS and agent endpoints. So if that's the pace at which we are changing, then we really need to look at how do we do identity governance and how everyone manages it. And one of the other key factors that a lot of enterprises tend to forget is a lot of SaaS vendors are intentionally bypassing central procurement, right? They're using usage-based swipe card signups. So anyone with a credit card can sign up, and then people just totally forget about it and never gets caught up in any of your ERPs or even a lot of net new SaaS governance tools tend to mess it up. So that's the real worry for me, right? How do we even then reach all the SaaS and AI apps that we're going to end up using in a very short period of time?
Absolutely. And I think that that's a good segue to our next segment where we actually talk about why shadow AI is thriving, right? So shadow AI thrives because employees value speed over safeguards. And I think we just talked about this, right? So when tools bypass procurement, lack SSO or audit trails, they silently fracture governance and security. So Lenin, on that, from an operational standpoint, what's the biggest challenge when you discover unauthorized use of AI applications?
Well, so first of all, it's scary. Then number one, trying to grasp the magnitude of the problem. Then now all of a sudden you have to find people and hire more people to address the problem. So I think none of that is accounted when you're actually going to buy these software, because most of the time it's usage based. When people wanted something, you allowed them to go and get something. But then when you're starting to understand the magnitude of the problem, now you have to address it. Then you need people and resources to really understand, who's using it, why are they using it, how often they use it, where they use it, and what kind of data is stored or shared. It opens up so many questions. The concerns are enormous. And so operational challenges are unaccounted in most of the cases. Now you're going to a CFO and asking like, hey, IT now needs a new security risk and compliance related staff. And the first question is, why? And then when you explain what is going on, the justification challenges to really too many operational issues that are basically coming out just to manage that. And then on top of it, you have the AI applications and AI agents and being discovered and deployed now in every part, and that adds up to complexities. So yeah, this is if you don't, you're doomed because people get frustrated. But if you do, you need to have a process, you need to have certain structure and how you do it. So it's like a Chinese checkers. You make one move and then you sometimes you just jump, and then it could be a snakes and a ladder, and then you might go 5 steps very fast, and then all of a sudden you're dropping down. That's exactly what happens. You're going significantly fast productivity, but then you're also kind of get trapped yourself and then pulled down because of the technical debt or all of these different applications you have to address. There's plenty of risks involved in addressing these operational.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, what I've seen from the market, because of the way things are, companies are downsizing, and in a lot of cases that has meant reduction in the IT workforce as well. But the amount of work is increasing. So automation, I feel, is going to play an important role, especially when manpower is becoming a little more flexible. Now, bringing a more focused light into the AI sprawl challenge, when 70% of CIOs call AI tools a top data risk, it's a signal, right? It's not just about the tools, but about trust. The bigger issue isn't just rogue apps, it's the lack of real-time oversight in a hyper decentralized environment. Titus, our research shows that marketing leads in unauthorized purchases. What's driving this departmental difference?
Okay, it's a sketchy topic in itself. I'm not against any marketing per se, but from a security research point of view, right? It's really concerning. And why we see that, I'm just giving you some data points that we've seen. The marketing tech spend, right? Everything from commerce to customer experience to loyalty programs, just the sheer tech spend is 300 billion. And that's compared to traditional IT application, it's comparable size, right? So marketing tech in itself is now a 300 billion market, and no wonder they are the ones leading these unauthorized app purchases. Primarily because we are in a fast-paced environment. With AI coming in, this has been the most impacted business line. Every marketing officer has been given a mandate. Can you run campaigns using ChatGPT? Can you run campaigns using XYZ tool, Claude, use whatever, but I need faster campaigns, faster leads. All of these has driven them to use whatever tools they want to, and they don't wait for the IT to give them all the security checks, logs. All of that is not taken care of. They're just going fast, getting leads. It's a success for them right now, but like Glenn talked about it, it's a success now, but 2 months down the line, when there's a breach that's going to happen because of that, that's when they come back to picture, right? Because all these unauthorized purchases, all that you've done, and all the 300 billion spend that you're doing in marketing tech, we really need to look into how much of those are authorized, how much of those do have access and integrators to all your security tools. All of that are big questions that all the marketing teams need to really look at, right? And these differences are going to exist. In fact, now it's marketing, tomorrow it might be finance, it can be a business line head who's leading, even a plant manufacturer could be buying out of those. So the endpoints of buying behaviors are also expanding, which is going to increase this, right? So we're not going to see the numbers reduce anytime soon. It's just going to increase.
Absolutely. And I think a recurring pattern that is coming through, right? And even Lenin mentioned the same thing earlier, that when you move fast, there are consequences. So moving fast is good, but you proceed with caution. I think that's one of the takeaways from today's session, right? So that brings me to the second part of our webinar. So we often talk about who has access, but rarely about how long they keep it, right? I mean, somebody can raise a request for AWS admin. Maybe that may not be the right example, but let's say Salesforce or any other business critical app admin access, and then you forget to take it out, right? Half of all employees retain elevated access longer than they should, and nearly half of ex-employees can still log in, because not all your apps are behind SSO anyway, right? Now, these invisible privileges leave behind unmonitored trails, and in 28% of cases, open the door to breaches. This is not exactly a cleanup issue, it's a governance gap. Let's open this up to the panel. Lenin and Titus, please chime in here. The statistic about 48% of ex-employees retaining access to systems is alarming, right? Can you walk us through a scenario where lingering access can cause a problem? What steps can be taken to mitigate such a problem?
Well, so first of all, 48% is already going to keep many CISOs and CIOs pretty much, lack of sleep. I could think of, them really looking at this as a priority. First of all, because you're just one breach away. First of all, if you bought a software on a credit card, basically changing the credit cards and turning them off is going to basically provide a quick overview into how many apps that are there on this card. Obviously, you could look at the transactions, and if it's a company card or it's a private card, doesn't matter. First of all, if a user left that is no longer an employee, simply you turn off their email address or your SSO. That controls all of the sanctioned apps, and but then you have a lot of other access that you left open that includes your internal systems and then external systems that you do not have under that purview. And so most of the time when an employee moves out and then going to another organization in a similar role, and you're using the similar application, they typically then follow that guidelines, and then by chance, if they also have the similar situation, they might use the same personal email address and log in, and surprise to their own surprise that they might be logging into an account that you probably used in the previous employer. So I think it happens in some cases where I personally, at one point, created something in Google Analytics and whatnot, and so I ended up having that routed into my personal email address, and then I ended up logging into, after I left, into my thing, and I was still an administrator because we were testing something. So things like those can happen, and you really don't know whether you're actually accessing your personal account in some cases, or you're accessing the company account. Yeah, you can name it. Like, there are many, many scenarios that you can run into where I think 48% can be realistic.
Yeah, just to add to what Lenin shared about, within that 48%, there could be a lot of privileged access as well, right? That's an even bigger problem. Now, a privileged access employee not necessarily moves out of the organization, moves within the organization, but to a different role. That also creates a bigger problem, right? They might be having access to certain elements they're not supposed to know as part of the new role. Someone else might come in, get access to it. So the privileged access is another big area that's kind of gaining traction right now, but not at the pace at which the privileged access is evolving, right? We are entering the agent era. They're getting access to some really powerful agents, right? That can really make some big difference to businesses, the way they're operating with just a click of a button, right? So if that's the kind of access that we are going to retain and give someone else access over, then it's a big hole, right? That's my bigger worry, right? So if I'm putting it in order, the privilege access, if anyone retains that access it should be much faster than any other access. So the time to recovery needs to be taken care of in those areas as well.
Absolutely. And like you rightly pointed out, we're not even sure if it's a human entity who has access or a non-human entity which has access. So there is an entire new area that we need to look into.
I think the key thing though is this is an afterthought, right? I mean, nobody actually knew that you have to control access, you have to control apps. Nobody even thought how many apps will be in an organization when you first started. As the sprawl is increased, as the security issues have brought a lot of this awareness, that's when you're realizing, what do I control? What did I not control? The discovery started, the CISO's role has expanded, and now it's gotten to much higher attention. But I think none of this is something that everybody or anybody would have envisioned. When you have an open border policy, or when you have an open door policy, people can come and go anytime. But then what they do when they enter matters, and that's when you realize what you need to secure. And so if it's an open society where everybody's going to respect, it's not mine, I don't want to touch it, yes, it will be fine. But if an organization's doors are open and you kept all of these access privileges open, obviously anybody can enter and do the damage. And then when the damage happens, that's when you start controlling. And I think that's really more about a reactive nature of the world today we're living in. And so, yeah, unfortunately, you would have to address it now and go lock every door that is open. And that's it. That's really what you're doing.
Absolutely. I mean, let's face it, right? Traditional IAM wasn't built for the license level complexity of SaaS and AI tools. And while there were signals, right, that AI agents will be coming, AI agents will do that, but everybody was still operating in the fact that it will be a bubble experience where you get a lot of wishy and it's at the top of the hype curve and you don't really have a lot of throughput after that. But AI has been pretty surprising. While the bubble still exists, right? I mean, it's not like agents are here today and they'll do exactly what you want to do, but we are quite close to that. And it's something that obviously traditional IAM systems, or any system for that matter, wasn't really built to support. Right. And especially when we talk about AI apps, many of these apps are popping up like every third day, fifth day. You've got 5 other record note-taking apps, 10 more productivity management app, which can be a simple ChatGPT wrapper, but it's still a different product with a different UI. And these are the apps which are problematic because they can't even sit behind SSO. They leave sensitive access and unmanaged, which is left unmanaged and again completely invisible to IT. Now, Titus, our survey shows 77% of these breaches involve compromised credentials, and the attackers are logging in, not hacking in. Can you help our audience understand what shift means for how they should be thinking about security?
Yeah, the first thing I really have to highlight is we are entering a continuous time period for risk, right? While a lot of the security policies and the way governance happens is very periodic, but the risk is continuous, right? Every time you access unmanaged tool is a threat, right? And when we look at the pyramid, the inverted pyramid, you start accessing 1,000 apps, the percentage of times you might get a breach is just going to increase. So that is what is really concerning, and enterprises really need to look into that because it's no longer going to be periodic where you're going to get breached, say once in 5 years, 10 years. It might even look at a quarterly time period, right? So that's the time period we're looking at. And one of the recommendations for all the audiences, while you're looking at a lot of metrics, mean time to revoke is another metric you need to really look at, right? How fast do you, if at all there's a breach that's going to happen, how fast can you really come out of it? But to do that, you really need to put your governance in place, right? If you don't really have a structured, automated governance, you're really going to struggle in the world of AI and SaaS, because that's the world we've already entered. And we've seen big difference for enterprises who have done a proactive versus reactive approach, right? Uh, Loss due to a breach is typically for ones who have a proactive approach, it's in the range of 1 to 2 million, whereas ones who are reactive, that tends to rise up to even 10 million to 20 million of loss, just because they were not proactive enough to react to breaches.
Yeah.
Thanks. That is. Sorry, Lenny, you were saying.
Yeah, I was just basically saying, like, we've gone past the word trust but verify to zero trust. Okay. So the extremities of the breach is all about we used to, like I said, in the policy was, okay, you could use whatever you want. To today, pretty much you put a iron fist and say, like, you're not buying any software without going to security, right? In many organizations. And so the idea is taking over a desktop or at a laptop or any device of every user is a must, because end users, in this case, the employees, are the biggest risk as a CISO, right? That is the only biggest risk, because every other servers and that you have in the cloud, most of those assets are easy to protect. What you cannot protect is the users, because they move their desktops, laptops, and they forget their passwords. They write them, they leave them. So many things from an endpoint usage standpoint you have to really protect. So the end user management and end user device management, end user protection is really where the biggest breaches are happening today. And with AI coming in, with LLMs and the sophisticated attacks, the phishing, spear phishing, all of these things are really going to breach no matter what you do. And so, yeah, it's one thing to protect the ones that are sanctioned. The other thing is when you don't know what you sanctioned, what people are using, how are you going to protect those? And I think that is where the majority of the time spent.
Lynn, it's good that you talked about LLM, because just this morning I was seeing an example of one of the largest chat programs launching their agent program, and there's a lot of loopholes in that, right? I looked at, they claim that it cannot access passwords, it cannot access your personal information, your bank accounts, how to log into those details. But there was a user who just put some prompts in and it just popped out all the information, right? So we are entering a place where end user plus a digital identity both together are acting together. So the end user itself is now having a digital identity, and that is also increasing the risk that we're looking at, because now a lot of chat GPTs and Claudes are an extension of your end user. So we really need to look into how these are going to get managed.
Absolutely. I think the non-human entities are something that are top of mind for most IT folks going into this. Moving on, just wanted to talk about a modern IGA solution. Now, most companies today are realizing that identity governance isn't just about provisioning access anymore. It's about controlling what apps are in use, who has access, why they still do. And we're seeing stacks of dozens of unused apps, duplicate apps, tools that somebody bought out of a whim but never used, or multiple teams adopting to similar tools like Miro and Asana, right? This creates confusion for the IT team. There, it causes redundant spends, and at the same time, there is nobody to kind of give that one centralized visibility to identify those different applications. What is the usage behind them? Who all have access? Are there overlapping users, etc.? We've helped one of our customers identify that they had two instances of Zendesk, and one of those instances were actually active for a team that has stopped to exist. So they were still paying for the licenses, but there was no team behind it. Then there are unauthorized tools, ones that never went through security review but are already connected to corporate data. Like Titus just mentioned, somebody decides, okay, it will be fun to plug in my Jira into ChatGPT so that it can write my own PRDs. And the next thing you know, your entire ChatGPT is connected to your Jira and is collecting information from there. You have GPT apps that people are filling in, which can be publicly shared. So confidentiality is obviously at a risk. And what is needed now is real-time visibility and governance across the entire SaaS and AI tool ecosystem, not just what's provisioned behind Okta or Azure or in some or for cloud native companies, Google Workspace, right? Platforms that can surface these blind spots, flag risky access patterns, and help IT teams work with business teams instead of policing them. That's where the shift is headed. Curious to get your 30-second view on what that is, and we will obviously be talking about the characteristics in a lot more detail on the next slide.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to talk about, we've been pretty generous about allowing employees to do whatever. Gone are those days. The problem is, like I said, when you have folks that should not be in organization infiltrated and left a lot of these, things that they can exploit. That open door policy of installing anything or bring your own devices. All of these things can eventually create a lot of risk. And I think, again, it comes down to the risk appetite of organization. Everybody needs to be a little bit more proactive, because when a breach happens, you really cannot comprehend the impact of it unless you start understanding the issue. So governance, creating awareness, training, and making sure that security is everybody's responsibility, not just IT or security teams. These are things that you have to bring into an organization's culture. And then also do a lot more proactive implementation of security processes, and detect, because every asset in an organization is enterprise's asset. It's a company asset. It's not employees. So I think that needs to be the first, most important thing that organizations need to employ and deploy.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the characteristics of what makes SaaS management important, or what are the characteristics of a modern IGA tool. So, Titus, what are you seeing in the market? Why are traditional IGA tools struggling? What are the characteristics of programs that are actually succeeding in today's modern world?
Yeah. Firstly, the traditional IGA tools were built for on-prem environments. They were not built for a dynamic environment that is brought about by SaaS and AI, right? They were built for running a lot of static applications, which changed once in, say, 10 years. But now SaaS applications are being changed every quarter. New connectors are coming in, at least 300 to 400 net new connectors are coming in every quarter from SaaS itself. Now that number will exponentially increase with AI coming in, right? Now that's not a place, while even if you look at it now, a lot of providers in the market do claim that we can also do non-digital identity access and governance, but that's an extension of what they've been doing so far, right? We are not in an age where an extension is going to suffice the problems that we're going to face, right? We need something that's AI driven from the core, right? I know it's ironical. AI has created a problem, but the AI itself is the solution for it, right? You have to look into a model where it's AI driven at the core. It needs to be real time. It needs to be federated ownership, right? You can't just wait for IT to approve everything. It needs a federated ownership model and some bit of technical elements like API, webhooks, event-driven ingestion. All of that is needed in a modern IGA tool. Otherwise, you're really going to struggle. And the last, but the most important is it's zero trust all the way, right? Not just people, all identities, agent, non-agent, human, non-human, everything needs to be zero trust. Anything that's least privilege is what we need to be the core of how you're designing access going forward, right? If you're not doing that, then you're going to lose billions of millions of money.
Absolutely. And I feel that especially the federated access is something that is going to be key going forward. Moving on, when we talk about building a future-ready IGA, right? So we spoke about the complexity of the governance challenges. It can also be transformative, like Titus just pointed out. AI is going to be a solution, and just to add to Titus's points, we can continuously discover new apps and access points, classify apps real time so that you can be aware of duplicates as well as shadow IT entering the tech stack. Run continuous risk-based access reviews instead of quarterly, or actually quarterly is also like a good case. In most cases it's either 6 months or a year or not happening at all. And of course providing intelligent recommendations for access optimization as well. So Lenin, what's one practical first step you would recommend to teams that now realize that they've got a major visibility and access issue?
I think, so real-time visibility is really important for many things. The zero trust, first of all, discovery, it needs to be very, very efficient. I think the basically putting some controls around turning certain application access, without any rhyme or reason, just to see who's actually using it. If you discover anything, so you know exactly what happens, investigating, a lot of sudden access patterns. A lot of things needed to be done. I mean, I think most CIOs trying to put sudden, I would say, radical practices into the organizations because of the concerns that they have, that they don't themselves understand, all of these application discovery usage also, right? So most of the people say, like, I'm using it, I need it, but when you remove it, nobody bothers about asking that access. So that's how, most of these sometimes you have to do. And that's how, when I was a CIO, CISO done is just basically cut it and then see who actually asks for it.
That's a smart way to look at it, right? And I think you do have to resort to such techniques to make sure that the right person has the access at any given point of time. In our latest CloudEagle survey, we found something that really surprised even us, to be honest, right? 85% of companies haven't adopted any kind of continuous AI-powered governance yet. They're still on that same path. Why do you think that is? What's holding teams back? We'd love to hear your inputs, Titus, Lenin.
Well, if you ask me why AI-powered governance is first of all, AI maturity is still, to be proven. And so, yes, people are experimenting, like you said, right? Most of the, even the best research, organizations are dumbfounded by a number of vulnerabilities that exist in everything that they deploy. So it's basically at this stage where we are is the very early stages of discovering AI's accuracy, AI's availability and feasibility, and its ROI. And if you have something that is basically coming in saying it's AI, first of all, you need to ask what use case, why AI, and what differentiation that you're bringing. And how is this actually protected, because you're adding something that nobody knows, and so how transparent that AI use that you can basically also discover, because you don't want to add additional risk to already an existing risk factor that you're trying to address. So yeah, there is a lot of skepticism, but however, innovation is one thing that we all know. We've kind of adopted first and then ask questions later. And then when you find problems, then you address them. And if it is too much, close them. So this is the way the industry in enterprises work, is that you don't say no, you just say yes, but, just move on.
Yeah, just to talk about why AI powered IG has really not kicked off. It's simply because explainability is still a factor, right? How are you really doing it? So that's what a lot of enterprises I've interacted with really ask from most of the vendors out there, right? Hey, you're claiming it's AI powered, and these are the things you say you will do, but how are you doing it? That's what really enterprises are asking and should ask, right? Those are pertinent questions. If you're gonna pay premium and you're gonna pay a lot more for because it's AI powered, they really need to know why it is so as well. So it's a fair ask, and not a lot of providers are able to do that, right? I'm being very transparent. A lot of people patchwork their RPA driven automation as AI powered. They might have used some bit of machine learning in some nook and corner, and then they claim it's all AI powered. It's not really going to work out, right? If you haven't been talking about AI powered for the last 3 years, then if you're claiming it now, then it's really not AI powered, right? That's a thumb rule I talk to enterprises. If a vendor hasn't talked about AI in the last 3 years, are they really doing AI? You really have to question it, right? So we are still looking at that maturity. A lot of AI washing is still happening. So enterprises are just taking a step back. Hey, I really need to look into it. So if there are vendors out there who are able to provide, hey, this is how we do it. These are the clear-cut examples, and these are the case studies. They'll definitely win.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because that's one of the most common questions that folks ask us, that, okay, you're CloudEagle.ai. And they're like, yeah, but we were AI before AI became AI. So yeah, I understand where that comes from, right? And thanks for that, Titus. So to close out the discussion today, Lennon, what do you think is holding teams back from adopting continuous access reviews or automation?
It's the process, right? I mean, obviously it takes, unless you automate most of these things, or reimagine the way that it is done today. It's a laborious process. Nobody wants to do something where you have to babysit, repetitively doing the same boring thing. You have to come up with a clever way to automate all of these, the provisioning, deprovisioning, access reviews. If you look at it, there's nothing really. An access review is typically done is yeah, give me some samples, some example files, I'll review it, and then I support. I mean, that has how most of the auditing certifications and anything else is you just have to show some proof, and that you're adhering to certain things. It's all about sample, right? But then in reality, you have to really run through the gambit of everything, and then and touching every single application, and making sure that it's humanly impossible for anyone to really do all of that work. And that's why we do sampling in most parts. But with AI and automation and the processes, you can implement the continuous tests, because it's doing robotically in the background, and so that nobody needs to really pay attention to some of these things. I think that's where we're going to go. I think it is inevitable. Why is it taking time? It's just because of lack of, clarity and reliability and expectations and security concerns, and the process, and then the people maturity. And so many things that typically take into consideration to introduce something like that.
Absolutely. I think one of the bigger challenges around not just AI governance, but automation in general is also the replacement factor, which needs to come through, right? It's not like you're being AI is replacing you. They're just giving you superpowers to perform better. So that's the mindset, I guess, which also needs to come down. Um, that completely makes sense, Lennon. Titus, last question before we go on to the panel, to the audience. From where you sit in the industry today, what happens to companies that continue to delay tackling this? Can they afford to wait?
Oh boy. So I'll just give you one data point to kind of put things into perspective, right? I'm genuinely not trying to scare people, but this was a benchmarking exercise we kind of did for one of the enterprises in the last quarter. Any $1 not spent on identity governance led to kind of $8 to $10 cost incurred due to breaches and any attacks, right? So that's the cost people are looking at. So the ROI is really there, right? So this is the ROI that I'm talking about. If people are really thinking about it, if you're spending $1, you're going to save $8 to $10 on your breaches and attacks. So for me, it's a no-brainer. But obviously, enterprises have their own priorities, budget, timings, and all of that. But the cost is high, right? And coming out of it, as well as it's really a big regulatory hurdle, right? GDPR penalties average 3.4%. If you look at some of the other, now retail has a SOX compliance. So there's a lot of regulations also coming and regulatory fines because of breaches. So the cost is just going to increase. I'm definitely expecting similar kind of guardrails and fines for AI related breaches as well. So we 8 to 10 might be a estimate that's on the lower end. We might see 12 to 14, not very long. So maybe in 2 to 3 years, that's the kind of cost you will incur.
Well, then that kind of makes going for a governance solution a no-brainer. But you rightly pointed out, enterprises work in their own schedules, right, with their own budgets and timelines. But that's good context. And thank you, Titus and Lennon. This has been really insightful. I hope for the audience as well as it has been for me. Um, got to understand a couple of more practical approaches to what we're trying to build here. The last 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to open up the floor to the audience. If they have any questions for our experts, please submit by chat or you can unmute to discuss.
Which industry is exposed in the shadow AI issues? Well, I think if you look at it, it's first of all, AI in most of the organizations is in a shadow way anyway, because AI agents and OpenAI use kind of prevailed before people realize how quickly that what got introduced, and then people with a credit card subscription. From there to deploying agents is still continuing. So there is no way to know how many agents are in the organization already, how many people are using AI. So that's why I think organizations are adapting to OpenAI, Perplexity, and all of these, and then enterprise packages are being deployed. And then so that, instead of going and using credit card and subscribing, you bring that into a paid but monitored aspects. So most organizations are vulnerable for that. I don't think anyone is exceptional as long as you're blocked of using those initially. But I think anyone that initially started potentially probably are trying to basically claw back all of those privileges.
Yeah, just to add to Lennon's point, it's not an industry-specific challenge, right? I believe it's more of a enterprise-wide, but just putting it into context, some of the large enterprises block off a lot of access, so they're relatively safer, but a lot of the mid-tier enterprises and a lot of smaller enterprises, they have even bigger risk, right? Because there's no central teams that are managing everything. There's a very small team managing everything for them. So those are at a higher risk. So that's what I would add. It's not really industries, but there are certain industries which are better off because they are highly regulated, like banking, insurance. Some of these are slightly better off because regulations are just throwing them down on the innovation curve, but all enterprises are under risk, right? The smaller you are, the bigger risk you are going to face.
Oh, this is a very interesting question. So this goes to every startup. And first thing is at what point do you really need an IT and security guy? First of all, if you're a startup or an early stage company, when I say early stage is, even if you have 10 employees, how much risk are you taking in order for you to use a computer? And so that's why you have virtual CISOs, virtual CIOs, virtual IT folks and security folks are offering their services, or you hire an agency that is going to protect you, but you need to protect irrespective, because every single user is vulnerable, whether they are part of the enterprise or they are not. I don't think security is an exception. It is a normal thing that everybody must take into consideration. So you have to start putting the guardrails as early as possible, because the farther you go, the harder it is going to be for every organization. So we have seen many organizations hiring IT and security resources very, very early.
So I was just adding to his point. Yeah, the moment you're looking at any employees close to 50 itself, you need to start investing in this. Budget should not be looked at the beginning, right? It's something you'll have to make for it while you start it itself. Otherwise, you're looking at a lot of risk in the longer run. But I would prioritize that investment rate. But there are solutions available with limited budgets as well. It's not like everything is costly out there. It is possible with a limited budget, but you'll have to be very hyper focused on what you really want to achieve, right? There is another question I do see. With so many breaches involving compromised credentials, what is the single most impactful thing we can do to prevent them? One size fit all.
Yeah, great question.
I can chip in my experience. I don't think so. There's a single solution that's applicable across, but predominantly where we've seen a lot of success from enterprises is it's just being proactive and intentional about it, right? Understanding what are your risks, putting that into perspective, mapping them, and then having a clear plan into these are the ways we are going to minimize the risks and breaches. And if at all you're going to have that breach happen, how do you quickly resolve? Having a clear plan in place for all of these is really what we've seen enterprises succeed. So this is the three, what I explained here is the three elements of zero trust. So it's not really about understanding your risk, but it's also about how quickly can you resolve those. So these two aspects, the moment you're able to understand these and have a solution to it, that those are the ones who will really succeed. But do not think that breaches won't happen. It's just about minimizing them.
Well, so you first of all, the most important thing about hackers and breaches is it's about how do you make it difficult for them to penetrate your peripheries, your defensive mechanism. So that's why you have most of these defensive aspects of make it difficult for them to enter, so that they don't touch you, and that's the idea. So you need to make investments to protect enough so that people don't touch you. Otherwise, you're pretty open. So all it needs is one weak spot, and pretty much you're open to taking over. So that's why I think investments in end users is the most important thing, and the server infrastructure most cloud providers are already kind of guarding many areas. So if your infrastructure is in cloud, I think you're protected there as well. That doesn't mean that you're not going to patch, but patch management is the most important thing. Address the vulnerabilities that are actually coming out there. Protect your end users, their devices. That's it. Those are the three areas I think you would mostly invest quite a bit.
Great point, Lenin. But we are almost at time, and I believe Anubhav's mic is not working. So this is a great conversation. Thanks again, Lenin. Thanks again, Titus. Thanks again, Anubhav, for this great conversation. And we hope everyone loved this conversation. And see you next time. Thanks.
Guys, take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.